So tonight, guys, we're going to be doing a podcast here. And there's a release for a congressional UAP committee. I'm making some coffee right now. Congressional Oversight Committee, Oversight and Accountability Committee is being established, which is actually a big deal. It's not full disclosure. It wasn't exactly, so this is a UAP announcement. It's not exactly aimed at UAPs in general. However, this is... Orange Joker. This is the big announcement from last week that was being teased. So, we're going to podcast here a little bit. Let's see if I can actually find the original footage. Good morning, Mufasa. Let's see. Congressional UAP, Congressional Oversight Committee. Yes, House Oversight Government Reform. 10 years ago. Okay. Was it actually just like 20 minutes? Oversight Committee. Now you can. Alright. Let's see. So this is only 20 minutes. I thought it was going to be longer. So even if you are against the current government, guys, there is quite clearly some really weird shit going on in the government right now that's just kind of stagnated or just kind of built up over the years. And it's kind of reached a tipping point right now in the U.S., which is where they're now basically trying to lance it. For better or worse, they're just taking the entire government and going like this with it. And there's a lot of shit that's falling out that's extremely weird, regardless of who. You might like the people doing it, you might not like the people doing it. It doesn't really even matter. But what is really interesting is all the shit and just like weird transactions and stuff that doesn't really just make sense that's falling out of it, basically. And one of the things that's being established by, I think, Luna is spearheading this, which is someone that's on the UAP Congressional Committee, is task force. I thought it was hour long. It's not. I was going to make coffee. I did make coffee. Maybe I'll just dump it out. But let's take a peek here, guys. I'll go grab my coffee. One second. Be right back. We've covered all the congressional UAP hearings, as it turns out. But this is a little bit different. And as it turned out, since they formally started looking at UAPs, UFOs, whatever you want to call them now, back in 2001, they had established AARO, which is basically the arm of the government that takes is is supposed to resolve or take in information about UAPs and UFOs, because there wasn't one, at least publicly available, even to Congress. Even Congress didn't know about one. So they established one, which is AARO. But over the years, it's become apparent that AARO isn't really working in the interest of either Congress or people. So, as it turns out, we now have a case in which we have an oversight committee for an oversight committee, because AARO was supposed to be transparent, relatively transparent, and especially to Congress, which has clearances to know about basically the information that they're gathering, but is quite clearly not always the case. And as such, they basically established another office to basically deal with the same thing, which is what this is. Let's see here. Which is absolutely hilarious. When you need a committee for a committee. Good shit. Let's see. So do we actually have something that is rather unadulterated? They don't even list the time on the videos anymore? What? I hate, like, they just made the the JPEGs like 10 times bigger. I absolutely hate that. It's live. Play. Let's even play. All right, let's take a look, I guess, at the PBS one.
Shine on the federal government.
It's actually very, if you didn't know, it's actually extremely hard to find the original videos. Even though it's supposed to be public, like, you have to dig for this shit. Oversight Committee. Now let's do Task Force. Videos. Is it on their actual website? No, it's not. Let's see. I think that's the best we're going to get without a lot more digging here.
I can think of no better person in Congress to lead this task force than Representative Luna. Last month, President Trump signed an executive order to begin the process to declassify information on the assassinations of JFK, RFK, and...
Regardless of what you guys think about conspiracy theories, this is actually really good shit, because there's a lot of stuff that is actually classified. That was, I don't know what your necessarily, like, the rationale or the meaning behind it might be, but it's pretty clear that they thought the public is incapable of processing, or even Congress, for the most part, incapable of processing. That's Luna, by the way. I don't know who that is.
And MLK. This task force serves to build on President Trump's actions. For far too long, the American people have had reasonable questions of what their government, which they fund every day, keeps hidden about certain issues. And for far too long, the federal government has not answered these questions. This creates distrust in our institutions. That ends today. The voters of this nation delivered a historic mandate to President Trump on November 5th. The keystone of that mandate was demanding increased transparency of their government and elected leaders. And the mandate of this task force is to acquire that transparency.
Captions are unavailable. This is why you set your language, by the way, guys. Make sure you set your language on your videos so people can use the auto-generated captions. I can't turn on the auto-generated captions because the language is for the video is not set. You should be able to manually set this, by the way. Or maybe it generates them. It could be it generates them and can't do it live.
We will open this up for a question from the media, but first I'd like to hand it over to my esteemed colleague and chairman, of the new task force, Congresswoman Luna, for her remarks.
Thank you, Chairman Comer.
Chairman Coomer?
When our founding fathers stood against tyranny, they did not merely oppose taxes. They defended the sacred idea of individual sovereignty. They declared that no government, agency, or title could infringe upon the freedoms of speech, religion, thought, and the pursuit of truth. For too long, the American spirit has been dimmed by a veil of secrecy, by a government that has grown too comfortable in the shadows, denying us the transparency we deserve. But today, we stand at the dawn of a new era where the light of truth begins to shine through. A few weeks ago, President Donald Trump made a historic announcement. With the stroke of a pen, he committed to declassifying the files concerning the assassinations of President John F. Kennedy, Robert F. Kennedy, and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. A decision not just monumental, but pivotal. It is with profound honor that I have been entrusted by Speaker Mike Johnson and Chairman James Comer to lead the House Oversight Task Force on Declassification of Federal Secrets. Together with the help of the White House, our intelligence allies, the Department of Defense, the Department of Justice, we will be conducting investigations into the following. The Department of Defense. Together.
Is there one with subtitles? I literally need to see subtitles. Subtitles literally help me process everything. NewsHour.
Thank you all for being here.
Different. They set their
President Trump.
They declared that no government, agency, or title could have.
Give it to News Nation. Totally run by aliens, by the way.
Infringe upon the freedoms of speech, religion, thought, and the pursuit of truth. For too long, the American spirit has been dimmed by a veil of secrecy, by a government that has grown too comfortable in the shadows, denying us the transparency.
I've joked about this before, by the way. I'm not a big, I am kind of conspiracy nut, sort of, kind of, but I kind of like to stay rooted in reality. But I think there's 4 branches of the government right now, by the way, if you didn't know that. There's 4 branches: the judicial, the legislative, the executive, and the Pentagon. And the checks and balances only function between these 3, with the 4th one being on top of everything else. It's funny because it's actually seeming more and more like it's true, which is why this is happening, which is extremely weird. And Doge, regardless of you hating Musk, Doge is definitely going like this to the fucking government. And what they're discovering is there's a lot of really weird shit in Department of Defense, aka the Pentagon. It has a lot of really fucking weird shit going on there that apparently no one is basically privy to, even Congress, even though they're supposed to have clearance to be basically privy to it.
We deserve. But today, we stand at the dawn of a new era where the light of truth begins to shine through. A few weeks ago, President Donald Trump made a historic announcement. With the stroke of a pen, he committed to declassifying the files concerning the assassinations of President John F. Kennedy, Robert F. Kennedy, and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. A decision not just monumental, but pivotal. It is with profound honor that I have been entrusted by Speaker Mike Johnson and Chairman James Comer to lead the House Oversight Task Force on Declassification of Federal Secrets.
Can't change the alignment.
Together with the help of the White House, our intelligence allies, the Department of Defense, the Department of Justice, we will be conducting investigations into the
literally everyone.
Following. The assassinations of JFK, RFK, and Dr. Martin Luther King, unidentified aerial phenomena, also known as UAPs, unidentified submerged objects, also known as USOs.
Which are basically UAPs as well. We have another name for UAPs again.
Epstein client list, the origins of COVID-19, and the 9/11 files. This task force will be a beacon of bipartisanship. On the Republican side, Representatives Burchett, Boebert, Burleson, Crane, Gill, and Mace will be joining me, although I'd like to note that I'm expanding this to the entire governing body and will be allowing certain members to waive on. Our first hearing is set for March. The date will be announced soon, and we've already initiated close to a dozen communications with various agencies, to include Pam Bondi at the Department of Justice and the Secretary of State. This will no longer be a task force that makes bold promises only to fade into irrelevance or send strongly worded letters.
AARO.
This will be a relentless pursuit of truth and transparency, and we will not stop until the American people have the answers they deserve. We will cut through the bureaucracy, challenge the stonewalling, and ensure that the American people finally get the truth that they have been denied for too long. If we are to endure and thrive as a nation, we must restore trust. trust through transparency. The American people
More
must
bodies there. It's
trust
not
to
just
think
one
for
person doing it.
themselves, to form their own
It's
judgments
good.
from the truth that they are entitled to know. We've been treated
If
like
it's one
children for
person,
too long, and
one person can be more accurately or more deliberately controlled or manipulated, as opposed to a body of people, which then gain safety in numbers more or less, because it becomes harder and harder to contain something, especially if more things go wrong along the way. It's basically kind of what you have to do, even though the president probably could do all of this. There's allegedly some information that says that Trump doesn't even want to do this stuff because apparently there may be even threats against him about it. I don't know whether that's true or not. There's a lot of weird shit in the UAP community, both true and untrue, and just completely fabricated bullshit. But it kind of stands to reason at this point, because other presidents also haven't done anything related to this, and possibly one of the reasons that JFK was assassinated was because he's attempting to open up this stuff. And that's kind of weird and interesting all in and of itself, which also, they've already found a bunch of classified documents relating, I think it was to JFK or RFK, it's one of the two. It was like 2,300 pages of information that wasn't handed to the committee that actually already did an investigation on it, which is absolutely insane.
kept in the dark by those we elected to serve us.
Yeah, no shit.
It is
The
my
Pentagon.
duty to begin mending.
You got the trifecta here, guys. Judicial, legislative, executive down here. You got the trifecta. Like, all keeping each other in checks, relatively within checks and balances here. And then you have the Pentagon on top here. Just like plop down on top.
This trust to form a new relationship between the government and the governed. Let us embark on this journey together.
Good morning,
towards a
Opie.
government that does not
Hi.
serve, but one that enlightens.
Annyeong. There we go.
Does not just serve, but one that
Got him.
Trust through transparency, that begins now. Without further ado, we'd like to open it up for questions, as I'm sure many of you have those. Hands up.
Thank you, Nancy. Obviously, your goals are aligned with the administration.
Microphone guy.
Classification of Martin Luther King and
Obviously, your goals are aligned with administration on declassification. How would you handle if you end up, whether it's President Trump or Attorney General, and they disagree with you, looking to declassify? So he's questioning whether or not, if there becomes contention between the presidency and the committee, what are they going to do in that case? Oh, I can't read that. Please, you're testing things. Do I have to get a Google Translate?
Well, certainly, I think that they'd be supportive, being that they're advocating for this, but also I want to remind the American people that this is bipartisan. There's also Democrats that are looking into.
I think this is actually extremely important, by the way. One of the things about UAPs, even if you think it's tinfoil hat, whatever, it's made up bullshit, right? The aliens built the pyramids, whoever, little green men. It doesn't matter. One of the coolest things about UAPs and the UAP congressional is, in this time in which left and right are so fucking far apart from each other, on opposite ends of the spectrum, there's actually something they can agree on, which is basically declassification and basically oversight of the government and stuff that's happening inside of it, because they're elected and they're in a position that should entail power, but they're finding out that they're actually relatively powerless, right? So we're actually at a point where both sides of this extremely, and the U.S. is very split right now by left and right, extremely split up. We're ending up in a scenario where both these guys are agreeing on something. And bipartisan support, guys, for any issue isn't something you should sneeze at, because it's very difficult for something that means a lot when both sides can actually agree on a topic matter. That's actually insane. And I think it's actually well worth pointing out every time it pops up, because it is bipartisan. You have too many tabs? I don't have too many tabs. It's a workplace. This is a living environment. The question is, why don't you have tabs? It's like your mind. How many tabs do you have in your mind?
But also I want to remind the American people that this is bipartisan. There's also Democrats that are looking into answering these very questions.
I don't think she announced, so like this kind of the first weird thing here, which I will point out, is the fact that I think of all the people she announced, they're all Republican. In the UAP congressional committee at the hearings, there's multiple people from Democrat and Republican. It's not just one side or the other. And they're all over the place in terms of like how far left and right they're leaning. They're every fucking where, which is why it's actually kind of cool to cover the congressional UAP hearings. Yeah.
That information with the American people.
But so far, I don't think they announced any Democrats, but they said it's open to more.
As I stated for far too long, there's been a massive push to keep the American people in the dark, and that ends today.
By the way,
Chairman?
I think she wasn't ever actually Luna. I don't think ever was actually kind of like at the forefront of spearheading the congressional UAP hearings. It's usually Nancy Mace, which I believe is another Republican, spearheading the stuff. So I didn't actually expect her to do something like this, but here she is. So
The task force does not have subpoena power.
And
What do you
I
ask?
wanted to push to keep the American people in the dark, and that ends today. Chairman?
The task force does not have subpoena power. I do. The task force is going to be subsidiary of the full oversight committee. So if we have to issue one, Congresswoman Luna, we'll discuss it and we'll take appropriate action.
I didn't
But
even
in
see the
full
question. There
transparency,
wasn't one.
We have a great
Couldn't
working
hear it.
relationship, as I stated earlier, with the White House, with the DOJ, with the Secretary of Defense, and the Secretary of State. The incoming.
They have to at this point. This is getting big. This is one of those things where you can't just ignore it because it's actually kind of a big part of the government now. If there's actually like a branch of the government for transparency now, it becomes much bigger, especially when they aren't being listened to because they're relatively straight shooters, and it maybe will eventually get perverted, which might be the case where they just use it for their own means. But as of right now, relatively unperverted, in its purest sense. It's actually there for the people and for Congress, which basically generally works for the people-ish, works for the people.
Director, I think, will be very supportive, and we've also been told that the CIA director is very supportive.
All
To
the
put it in
big guys.
perspective, I think that this
That's like
issue
old blood.
transcends not just
Dodd,
one administration,
Dodd,
but
FBI,
multiple
CIA.
administrations, and it hasn't been until now that we've been able to one is supportive. To put it in perspective, I think that this issue transcends not just one administration, but multiple administrations. And
Hopefully.
It hasn't been until
I think
now.
I really think, because it is bipartisan, I think most people can see the benefit of transparency, especially when they're working towards, if you are, if the president doesn't even know, we talked about this before, guys, how weird would it be that the president isn't even privy to knowledge on UAPs? That says something. He's supposed to be at the highest level of the government and has clearance for everything, but isn't allowed to know the things because he's not. He's just going to be there for 4 years? Yeah, that's crazy. And obviously it would piss off any president there, right? President or people in Congress.
That we've been able to get people actually in positions of power that will push for transparency. Now, if I find that different entities in the various intelligence agencies are stonewalling us, I'm going to make that known to the American people. But as of right now, we are cautiously optimistic.
I mean, the funny thing is, guys, if you've watched my videos on where we talk about the congressional UAP hearings, the funny thing is AARO was exactly supposed to do this, and what it turned out with the last congressional UAP hearing in November, I think it was, like 4 days later, so on Monday after the weekend, there was a hearing from AARO, which didn't say anything. They're supposed to report quarterly, and they really don't. There was a hearing from AARO where the new director, because the old one was fired because they found out he wasn't actually doing what he's supposed to, Kirkman or whatever his name was fired. The weird thing was, he was sitting there talking to us, but he was literally reading a script. And the funny thing is to his back right, slightly off camera, but occasionally would show up in shots, is a director of the Department of Defense or something. I forgot her name. But she's sitting literally right there, head nodding and smirking the entire time he's giving his speech, weirdly like a handler shit, right? Where you have someone that's just a chokehold away from the guy that's supposed to be saying something off on script, right? Saying everything he's supposed to, and if he goes off topic, he's gonna know, and they have this family or something, I don't fucking know. But she was just sitting there, head nodding, Susan something. She was just sitting there the entire time, just going. And then, towards the end, she started cracking a smile. It was the weirdest shit I've ever fucking seen. It literally reminds me of, some sort of weird abusive relationship, where you have someone in the back that's just, this is why you take two people out of the room with someone that might be abusing them, right? Because that person otherwise exerts influence over everything they say and do, right? You separate them. But she was sitting right there, right behind him the entire time, just... You're what is going on here? But it's been pretty clear ever since AARO was formed, which is the anonymous, all domain anomalous resolution office, I think it is. Basically, they gather up all the information about anything that is unknown. So UAP can be anything. It doesn't need to be UFOs, right? Or little green men. It could be things underwater, you know, the Yeti, whatever. You know, it's just everything that doesn't make sense, and reports of it, like genuine reports, get gathered up into this one place. But the thing was, they started dragging their feet where they didn't bring a website online they're supposed to do in the first 6 months, and it took them 2 years, I think, or a year and a half. And that was after Congress legit like went after the balls, and like it took them forever. They just kept dragging their feet on everything. And now, after last fall, they're like releasing resolutions on really old cases, like the profound ones, like Tic Tac. There are basically 3 big government like unknowns that were like, you know, we don't know what these are, and this has been relatively unsolved for like anywhere from 5 to 20 years. But the big ones, let's see. Government UAPs videos. There's a profound list. It's literally on Wikipedia. Pentagon UFO videos. There you go. Gimbal, GoFast, and TikTok. Tic-Tac, excuse me. Not the TikToks. These guys, which are all extremely hard to debunk because they were taken by military personnel. In some cases, multiple military personnel. Like, I think one was 2 jets with tandem jets. So there's 4 people that all saw the same shit. And they're recorded generally with radar. And they're extremely hard to disprove. And then last fall, they just started debunking them. I think last fall they debunked, I think it was a Tic Tac. They debunked Tic Tac, and they said it was parallax. And parallax just means it's closer to the camera than it appears. And you're like, maybe not. No. Yeah, look, these pilots are literally there. They know what they're seeing. They've literally been around birds their entire life. They captured on a radar, and it's parallax of a balloon. And you're like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? The most recent one. What was the most recent one? I think they debunked, quote unquote, debunked gimbal. And oh god, I just saw it. And they're doing this right around every time there's these UAP hearings, by the way. The congressional UAP hearings, like as a way of detracting from it. It's really weird. Let's see, AARO. I think they did one in January. Yeah, GOFAST. Yeah, here it is. So this is on the AARO website, which is an official government website, just to point that out. It's not some made-up bullshit. They said there is no anomalous speeds. Object did not move at anomalous speeds. So this is GoFast, which is this guy. And this is, by the way, FLIR cameras are not the same thing as your 4K movie cameras. This is not the way they work. They're basically thermal imaging cameras and designed to track heat signatures, especially for jets, because, as you can imagine, jets actually exhibit a gigantic heat signature. That's what the pilot's tracking right now, and he's trying to get a lock on it with the automatic tracking. I think this is for weapons lock. But just seeing if you can auto-track it. Oh, Jesus Christ, it's really loud. So, they said this thing isn't moving fast. This is water in the background, by the way. This is all the military, by the way. This isn't made up bullshit. This is not shit from TikTok. This is not AI generated. This is like, I think this was 2002? 2004? Yeah. Long time ago. And this is like one of those things that they haven't been able to debunk for a long time. And they just said, it's not moving fast. You're like, yeah. It's a pretty big deal. There's other videos, but this, like, high credibility because this is literally captured by military aircraft.
No, I took an auto track. Oh, okay. Oh my gosh, dude. Wow, look at it fly.
They have no idea what it is. These are trained pilots, guys. Literally designed to make life and death calls. And they legit have no idea what the fuck this is, which is why it was brought up through multiple chains of command. I have no idea what this is. And it wasn't debunked for the longest time. These are trained pilots in tense situations designed to literally look through the shit and, you know, just every day-to-day life, and they have no idea what this thing is. And AARO, just this, I think this was a January 16th or something. When was that? AARO.mil. There it is. When was this release? January. Oh, this is 2015. This isn't this isn't the 2004 one. So, so Luna announced that she was going to have a press conference on oversight. This is kind of like the stuff just kind of aligning with itself, guys. So Luna, the person we were just looking at for the press conference, it's kind of interesting how these all come together. Announced over a week ago that she was going to, like, she had a major announcement. And then this shit popped up. And this, by the way, this isn't quarterly. So this is supposed to be quarterly. This is either in January, what's the other, March? April. January, April, right? And this happened literally right before, when did she make her announcement? And obviously it could be within a day. Luna oversight announcement. Paulina. Was this? God, X, unless you log in, is extremely... Twitter is extremely hard to browse. Let's see. There's thirst trap stuff on their fucking Twitter. That's hilarious. There's no way. Yeah, she literally has thirst trap in, like, her pinned photo. That's hilarious. Let's see. When was this announced? Where's her official account, not her personal one? Oh my god, there's so many posts. February... fifth. This is on the 6th. Just a radioactive dolphin? True story. They actually use the dolphins in the military. Not sure you've heard of that. That's actually pretty cool. They train dolphins for undersea activities, including finding... Used to be for finding mines. I think this one started was in World War II. Yep. It was on the 6th. Was that the first announcement? I don't think that was the first announcement. No, I think she announced it on the 3rd. And then on the 6th, where she made another, basically she had an interview for the announcement, that's when this popped out. When was the first announcement that she's going to announce something? The announcement of the announcement. It's just kind of weird how all this shit slots together. They did exactly the same thing last fall. Go fast all night long. I'm scrolling so fast right now. Lots of normal news. February 3rd. So 3 days after she made the first announcement. Yeah, well, it's a podcast. I always have my face cam on for podcasts. And if you guys are curious about that, you can go look at my highlights on YouTube where I basically talk. Basically every podcast has a face cam. Turning off my face cam actually does a couple different things. One, I think there's a lot of people that don't care. Two, I wear glasses normally and contacts absolutely dry the fuck out of my eyes. Three, it is extremely less stressful. So, like just chilling out playing games, it's much better. And you know that. You've been here for my podcast. Don't even, Idwin. Don't even. But yeah, so the 3rd, she announced the announcement. The 6th is when this happened. The 6th was also another announcement where she had an interview about the announcement, which she didn't have. And then this shit popped out. The exact same thing happened last fall when the UAP Congressional Committee, I think it was on a Thursday, they had their UAP Congressional hearing, which a lot of really weird shit. They had more witnesses and a lot of weird shit was popping out. And then on the next Monday, immediately on the next Monday, AARO had a press release where they then debunked, they quote unquote debunked Gimbal. So this is Gimbal, by the way. Why is it so fucking loud?
Fucking drone, bro. There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA.
Trained military pilots, by the way.
There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA. Oh my gosh. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west. Look at that thing, dude.
This, they said, was parallax, meaning it was closer to the camera than it appears. So, these guys couldn't figure it out. The trained military pilots in their F-18s couldn't figure out that this was just a bug or a bird. Like, what the fuck are they talking about? Like, this is really fucking weird shit, guys. Like, it just is, like, more so isn't the fact that these haven't been debunked, because maybe they don't know, but it's the fact that they come up with really weirdly asinine explanations for this shit for something that's been around for 20 years. Like, these are trained military pilots in charge of, like, you know, weapons and million-dollar aircraft, hundreds of million-dollar aircraft. How much do they even cost? How much is F-15? It's like $60 million. Yeah, like, in charge of this, and they can't figure out that it's a bird. Does this look like a fucking bird to you guys? Is it a balloon? Like, what is this? What the fuck is this? Oh my god. Jesus Christ. And we got the weirdos from fucking Kick. The fine bird, it's a great bird. Blah 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 blah. Goodbye. Yep. I bet that's literally just copy paste. It's like he has like literally a WordPad document open and he just copy paste line for line because he obviously didn't take time to type that out and I probably couldn't. So he's literally just copy-pasting from some sort of script he has for himself. But, yeah, is this honestly, maybe it's undercover CIA agent trying to dismiss the streamer with 10 viewers that's watching the fucking, like, how fucking ridiculous is this trying to dismiss it? It's a covert op, guys. They're trying to dismiss this information that I'm watching on my channel right now. Well, like, this doesn't make any, yeah. It's the bestest bird. It is a fantastic bird. Yeah, and he's saying this is like one of a fleet. I think it's a bunch of birds suffering from parallax. And by the way, stuff like this is extremely credible for a couple different reasons that I like pointing out. Yeah, something that aircraft literally can't do, by the way. A couple different reasons I like pointing out how credible this is one, the military generally doesn't make random footage like this because why would they? There's no clicks to be had here. It's not something where they made this for like viewership or reputation, right? Two, it actually harms their reputation because people that for the longest time they suffered stigma. They talked about this in the congressional hearings. People in the armed forces suffer stigmas from reporting this stuff because the armed forces, the military, is like a hierarchy of it's like playing. It's like going up the ladder in Rivals or whatever, right? There's a hierarchy where you go up the ladder, you get better rewards, you get more reputation, you get your friends like you, everyone. It's like literally a whole shtick, right? And being able to maintain your credibility is very important. You go start talking like a crazy, it harms your ability for a promotion, which then harms your track. It's like literally a track that you just go up, and it hurts your chance of going anywhere. So why would they even talk about it? It's one of the problems they had is no one talked about this stuff because they didn't want to be seen as crazy, because then it hurts their chances of a promotion or benefits, or like they might be ejected or whatever. Like they don't want any of that noise. They just want it. They're part of a machine. They just want to do their job and get rewards for it, right? And for the longest time, they didn't even talk about it. There's no reason for them to actually mention this stuff or like release this stuff in the first place. They're doing it because they thought other people really need to know this, and it took them a long time to even get the footage out of the military in the first place. And absolutely bonkers. There's like you can't just discredit this as like, and then the staff themselves are very trained, right? Military pilots or Air Force pilots are extremely well trained. There's actually, it's like, I forgot what the percentage is, but it's like 99.3% of people that join the Air Force don't actually ever get in a jet or an aircraft at all. Like besides like training, like they don't fly anything. They just do like their pencil pushers, mechanics. They do all sorts of background infrastructure stuff. There's only a handful of people that are like the elite of the elite that are actually chosen to fly airplanes. It's actually like you think that you can just go into the Air Force and fly stuff, and that's not really the way it works at all. So you have extremely well-trained individuals that are flying these aircraft that definitely know what they're looking for and are very familiar with military technology or any advanced stuff, and they have no fucking idea what this is. And it makes it extremely difficult to just go out the window and say, nah, it's a bird. Nah, it's parallax. These guys didn't know what they're talking about. They locked onto it with a FLIR. And it's a Mylar balloon with, apparently because it's actually extremely hot, Mylar balloon with, or really cold, one of the two. You can't really tell here, or I don't know how to tell. They locked onto this, and it's just a Mylar balloon that's moving extraordinarily fast. You're like, maybe not. And then whatever. These have been around for a real long time. Actually, it just says the dates on them right there. 15. There's 2004 was this guy. Audio. I've definitely seen better versions of this from 2004. I think this is where they had the 4 pilots, so 2 tandem aircraft. And all 4 of them saw the same thing. Which makes it, in the case of that, is highly redundant system, because there's 4 different pilots that apparently are having a, what is that called? A collaborative delusion all at the same time, right? And you're like, and the aircraft saw it, and they recorded it with, thermal. But, lo and behold, AARO debunked another one right before the oversight committee was announced. AARO debunked another one. Good for them. Good for them. This has been around forever, guys. Good for these guys. Been around forever. And AARO debunked another one. Assessed object speed 5 to 92 miles per hour. Which, by the way, is still weird. But putting that aside, apparently it wasn't moving that fast. So, nothing to worry about, guys. Nothing to see here. AARO figured it out again. Anyways, this committee is now here because AARO is releasing shit like this. Because AARO is doing stuff like this, which is clearly, whatever. They can't figure it out, right? They can't figure stuff out. So, maybe they need some more time or whatever. But when they do something and it really looks like it's going the opposite direction of anything that anyone else is noticing, that's looked at, including the first-hand observers. Yeah. Video appeared to show object moving at high speed. AARO cannot definitively identify the object, but displayed no anomalous performance characteristics. Department released a GoFast video in 2020. It's now available for viewing at FOIA Reading Room. Yeah. It is not moving fast, guys. So don't worry about that. They figured it out. It's all okay. It's a bird. Yeah, it's a fucking bird.
As of right now, we are cautiously optimistic.
Yeah. We were cautiously optimistic about AARO, and that was 3 years ago now. 2001 is 4 years ago. And I think they called for it in 2021, and then it was made in 22, established in 22, and then we had like 3 years of just nothing.
Our first investigation will be announced, but it's going to be covering on a thorough investigation into the John F. Kennedy assassination, and I can tell you...
That's one Republican, so obviously there's going to be some priority here in terms of what people on the committee actually want to see first. And for like conspiracy theories or just people in general that are really curious on the Republican side, JFK is one of the biggest ones because he's a president everyone really liked, and Republicans are very much traditional. So
far, the initial hearing that was actually held here in Congress was actually faulty in the single bullet theory. I believe that there were 2 shooters, and we should be finding more information.
Possibly 3 shooters, by the way. Yeah. If you look at some of the curious stuff that was released, I watched the News Nation most recent piece where this guy who wrote a book on it was talking about basically the evidence relating to, and there's so many holes in it, it's like fucking Swiss cheese if you actually look at it. It's not just really conspiracy theory shit, where like one of the guards got splattered with JFK, and he ran up to the grassy knoll, as it's called, the prolific thing, and because he thought there's a shooter there, which is not where Henry Oswald, I think it is, was. Yeah, he ran up to the grassy knoll because he thought the shooter was there based on basically getting hit by stuff, and it turned out nothing was there. So, well, allegedly, nothing was there.
As we are able to gain access into the SCIF, hopefully before the files are actually released to the public.
Thank you for doing this. Have you identified the Democrats who will sit on the task force, and could you talk a little bit more?
So he's actually about bipartisanship here. This is actually really important because they need to get Democrats on there. Like, regardless of whatever their thing is, she has to get Democrats on board with this too. They have to be Democrats there. That's just the way it is in order to maintain like more like bipartisanship and maintain the idea that this is here for more than just the current government that's in power. Like Republicans that are in power, they need to get Democrats on there. And this is actually an important question. You identified the Democrats who will sit on the task force, and could you talk a little bit more about the role of Democrats?
Yeah, so again, this is a bipartisan commission. Remember, JFK was a Democrat. RFK was a Democrat, and I'm sure that I think the entire conference has a question on what actually happened with Dr. Martin Luther King, but also UAPs. You guys know that that was the biggest bipartisan bicameral hearing that we've ever had, I think, in congressional history. I do not know who their members are yet. They've noticed it, but they're taking this very seriously. This is not...
Okay, so it's not that they aren't allowed to be there. They just, Democrats haven't figured out what they want to put on the committee. I assume Nancy Mace isn't a Democrat. There's a few different Democrats that were at the UAP congressional committee, and I'm sure they're going to be, some of them are going to be here. I think, is Moskowitz a Republican? Maybe he was.
The investigating committee, we're actually looking to present truth to the American people, and it's in my opinion that no one person elected to office is more important or more qualified to look at the information that they've been hiding from us, and so we look to push for that transparency.
Pentagon, fourth branch, guys. What sort of witnesses do you expect to have at your hearing?
Would you like to jump in? Yeah,
First Department, former
agencies.
What
we're actually looking to do with the JFK investigation. I'm looking to actually bring in some of the attending physicians at the initial assassination, and then also people that had been on the various commissions looking into, like the Warren Commission looking into the initial assassinations. There's been conflicting evidence, and I think that even the FBI at the time reported some anomalies in the initial autopsy at Bethesda, Maryland. All of those seem to have been...
they couldn't corroborate their own story, which they couldn't actually figure out. So whoever was engineering it didn't actually completely plan out the scenario.
Rinse and repeated in the media to push a certain narrative that we don't agree with. And so I think that in order to put to bed some of the theories that have been out there on John F. Kennedy, we have to know the full truth. And the full truth starts with transparency, and that's why these files is so important for the American people to read for themselves.
Her anxiety is through the roof, by the way. The question.
The biggest information problems that we've had with UAPs is the amount of stonewalling, stovepiping, and also...
and just straight up, whatever the fuck this is, it's funny because AARO was made to be the more transparent, public-facing arm of the UAP investigation, and like the Pentagon just like literally went in there and went, and then just lobotomized everyone in the agency. like yeah, they just completely took it. Allegedly, you know, this is my tinfoil hat moment here, right? Obviously, maybe that didn't happen, but there is arguably some really weird shit going on, and maybe, just maybe, AARO isn't necessarily what we want it to be or what they wanted it to be. So, you know, hopefully, because there's people that are elected into this committee, especially the more people there, the better, it's going to be harder and harder for one individual to control things, right? And, yeah, what's come out of AARO has been very lackluster because they keep reporting on the number of filings they have, so people basically reporting to them, and it keeps going up, and they basically resolve almost nothing. And the stuff that they don't resolve, they don't even release. They don't even... because apparently there's a clause in which active investigations cannot be, like, declassified. So what they do is they just never declassify. They just never take it out of active invest. It's always an active investigation. So it's never closed, and as such is never declassified, which is kind of ridiculous. But yeah, this is, like... I don't know. This is going to be an interesting turn in events, because, like... all that would basically happen here is the Pentagon, I guess, could go deeper, where they just become more secretive. But what do you start doing in that case? You just start dismantling the Pentagon? Maybe that's the eventuality where this is going to go, is if because then it basically would result in basically people having to be removed from power, or basically there'd be a coup, as it turns out. Where if Congress starts forcing stuff, which the American people would be on the side of Congress, it then turns into basically the Dodd versus everyone else, and that's not a case you want to be in. That's like the whole reason we have checks and balances in the first place. So it'll be very interesting to see what pops out of this and how fast they move, because government tends to move pretty slowly. But that being said, AARO's moved at an absolute snail pace since it was incepted and was made. So, yeah.
So it seems that there is this push to gaslight the American people into looking at the evidence and then not fully believing it. I think for us, if we're writing the
fucking hate gaslighting. Gaslighting is one of the most detrimental things ever happened. It takes manipulation and then just goes even further, just like balls to the wall. And fucking youngins do that all the time. The young generation does that shit all the time because it's easier than taking accountability for anything that you're doing. Is literally just keep trying to push your narrative until the other side just gets tired and just like, yeah, sure, one of those things, and just completely rewriting history and like stuff that observable things. Just because especially with people that you might like. So in a case of romance, it can be extremely detrimental in romantic relationships because you obviously don't want to have the conversation of, no, that's not what happened, and here's the receipts, as the kids say, right? Here's the timestamps, because another person goes, you know, I guess gets really pissed off about that. But it kind of just needs to happen, and it's not a good relationship to be in if you're in the place where people are gaslighting you in the first place. And some people just do it as a defense mechanism to begin with, but in this case it's obviously extremely detrimental because it's some part of the government that we're actually supposed to trust in, right? Believe in. It's working for us.
For writing the budget overall for whatever programs might be out there. Why is it that members of Congress who are given a top secret security clearance are being denied access? That's not a free and true government. And so for us, especially...
So they're supposed to have access to this stuff.
Secretary of State who's actually open to declassification, and Marco Rubio, we're hoping to present that information and at least acknowledge it from a government perspective, that we are not alone, but also let's see what the evidence is.
NHS. It's also funny, by the way, that they can have congressional hearings like this, and you legit can't hear people that are asking questions that are actually kind of important.
In fact, letters went out this morning, not just on RFK, JFK, and MLK, but on everything that I had listed above, to include UAPs, Epstein, and 9/11, and COVID, to the State Department, Department of Defense, CIA, and then also we'll be sending some to the FBI, and letters have also gone out to the NSA.
Got them. Maybe. The most interesting, once again, guys, even if you fucking hate Republicans or whatever, this has to be at least a little bit tantalizing to you. Like, just the whole idea of what's, like, being kind of opened up here that is clearly stuff that some people really don't want you to know, but that means you should probably know it even more, because it probably changes a lot, is actually starting to come to light. And more interesting is how they're going to actually deal with the fallout. Like, if they, like, what's actually, how these government agencies are going to respond to this, what they're going to do. Like, here we have AARO literally running not misinformation, like just like what would this be called, like a deflection. Like running deflection, like, here, don't look at that. Here, look at this. Over here, look at this, guys. We debunked this video from 8 years ago that no one could figure out. Oh, by the way, it's not actually moving fast. You're like, maybe no. Good timing though. That's interesting timing. I'll give you that.
Well, what's interesting on that specific committee is what, to my understanding, when they actually brought in expert witnesses, they weren't actually people that were in attendance to the initial autopsy at Bethesda.
I'm not exactly sure what this is on. I think this is a JFK assassination where they're talking about the witnesses which weren't firsthand observers or people that were actually there.
But also, this is a bigger committee than just the JFK assassinations. We're also expanding into Epstein, COVID origins, 9/11s, and then UAPs and USOs. And so before, where we initially had
USOs are underwater.
This
Which,
is
guys,
going
by
to
the
be-
way, if you have a base on a planet, and the best place on Earth literally to hide something would be in the water. Because A, we can't actually go that deep, and there's some really deep parts of the ocean. B, we can't move fast, and C, we're blind as a bat down there. Literally, we use sonar to figure out what's doing what, right? We can't see shit. It is literally the world's best place to hide anything, and there's like, you hide heat signatures, like shit, like heat signatures don't even work because water is a great just disseminator of heat, right? It would be extremely easy to hide something super far underwater.
encompassing committee that's going to work directly with the White
And there's,
House.
by the way, while it's not talked about a lot, there is starting to be some more information that's coming out based from submarine commanders where they're talking about stuff moving extremely fast underwater. I think the most recent one is where they talked about something the size of like a football field underwater, moving at basically close to the speed of sound, which is in no way, shape, or form possible by either wildlife or technology that we have, or like even like the fastest moving stuff underwater is basically like torpedoes, right? Like just absolutely absurd.
That they're declassifying. Yeah. Correct. Correct. There's actually 3 different government investigations into the JFK assassination. But again, this committee is expanding not just there, but outwards into other fields. And again, we're working directly with the White House. In previous investigations, they didn't have access to the information that we are going to have access to. And so that's a big deal, especially if you're looking at what truly happened with JFK.
Yeah, and not is like getting on top of the hierarchy of authorization. And once again, if the Pentagon just has say over anything, it'll be very curious. As she said, if they have problems accessing stuff, they're going to literally come back to the public, and I'd agree with that because the public's probably like we're gonna see torches and pitchforks if it becomes obvious that the president and the Congress, regardless of what side you are, aren't actually running the government. I think pretty much anyone would be like, maybe that's not exactly what should be happening in the U.S. I'm not sure, guys. Maybe this isn't where we want to be. You know, one of those things, right?
I already have a top secret clearance.
Yeah, and she's still
All
denied
members-
information.
All members of Congress have a TSCI. The question is do we get SAP access, of which Chairman Comer has been very supportive and will be getting SAP access as well.
SAP access is special access programs, which are basically like above top secret clearance, if I remember right. So there's stuff where you need even higher level of clearance than top secret to access. And then there, I think, is USAPs, which is unannounced top secret programs or whatever it is. So, like, it goes even deeper than that, which is some of the stuff they've been denied, which is the whole reason this committee is being formed, is because they were actually being denied information and, like, access to things that they wanted to see. And they should have access to it, but they don't.
2 more and then we're going to wrap it up.
Obviously, some of the questions on some of these topics, whether it's Jeffrey Epstein or
Obviously, by the way, this doesn't mean if Congress gets to see it, it's stuff the public gets to see, but the elected officials should be able to see it in the first place in a SCIF, which is a secure, whatever it is, basically a secure meeting where none of the information leaves the room. But if they can't even access it, that means, like, you know, the people that we elect don't have access to information or can even, you know, make decisions on it, right?
are obvious. What specifically, though, are the questions you're looking to get answered with regards to September 11th?
We just want the truth. How much did the CIA know in advance? But also remember, when you have only certain information that's shared with the American people, that's when conspiracy theories happen. And it's in my opinion that conspiracy theories can be detrimental.
Sure.
It doesn't mean that in the last couple of months we haven't been right on a few things, but what I will say is I think that we deserve to give this information to the American people. I don't agree with the stonewalling that's occurred. And also, how do we prevent things like it from happening in the future? And we have to know the full picture, and the American people deserve to know that as well.
Huh? Very interesting, guys. Like in the last couple months, this has gotten really fucking weird.
But I would encourage them if they have anything on JFK, Epstein, or anything in between that they bring it to our office immediately. Okay, one more and then we'll wrap
is
up.
there going to be another arrow?
Of course.
Think they're taking a picture? Oh no, it's for him.
Well, we have a lot of questions. Some of the people in the mayor's administration have been vocal that they weren't going to comply with federal law, that they were going to continue to act as sanctuary cities. We want to know about coordination and communication they had between the previous administration. How did so many of these illegals get there? Who was paying for it? Who were they communicating with to be able to provide housing? And
I think they're talking about basically the ridiculous amount of illegal immigration into the U.S. right now. And regardless, by the way, like how this is turning out is kind of curious in and of itself. If you want a tinfoil hat, because I originally thought this was a tinfoil hat thing. We're talking about Democrats trying to get illegals into the country to basically win the election, right? You think that's like tinfoil hat shit, but it's actually seeming more and more like it's entirely possible that this happened. And especially with what DOGE is figuring out, so Department of Government Efficiency is figuring out in terms of payments and where people are going, this might have actually been relatively government sanctioned, which would also explain why Democrats wouldn't even address the idea of illegal immigration into the country for the last election, or wanting people to have voter ID, which is, you know, you think it's crazy until you realize most states, well, not most states, I think like a third of the states didn't require to either have a driver's license or what's the other one? Passport. So either of the two things. And by the way, you could make a case for, people can't access driver's license because they're expensive, but you could just make a program, like maybe there isn't one right now, but you could make a program where people could just get a driver's license for free, but it wouldn't allow you to drive, right? It's just an identification piece of paper. And both those things are really good at identifying you. There's states that actually didn't require it for you to have either of those, which is ludicrous, right? It's absolutely ludicrous. Like, why wouldn't you want to have that? Like, it's just bare minimum for verification. And Democrats were hearing none of that with the last election, which is arguably one of the reasons they lost, is because it doesn't make sense to people. A lot of stuff that they were talking about didn't make sense, and then they just alienated their own voters, that were on their side, and especially men, especially young men, just completely alienated them, didn't give two shits about them, and just completely tone deaf. Even to this day, some of the posts I see are just completely tone deaf about the election and why Democrats basically lost. And I'm not even a big supporter of Trump, but he was basically the better option. If you look, like one of the most recent things that popped out, I think with from the FCC in the last month, was the unedited, which by the way I think you guys should look at, is the unedited interview between 60 Minutes and Harris, because it changes completely the way that she sounds. Like she's just like a rambling idiot, that has no idea what she's saying, and they basically cut apart almost all of her interview, and it completely changes how she sounds. And I thought it was really weird because I've looked at, back when the election was happening, I looked at some of her past speeches, and she's really bad. But then during the debate, she was on fire, right? She was on fire for the first debate. It was absolutely absurd and just ran circles around Trump. And then there's the conspiracy theory guys, which are like, oh, she's wearing a earpiece. Look at this earring that she has that looks really fucking weird. And yeah, no, maybe not. But then afterwards, she also just turned into an idiot again. And then the 60 Minutes piece also confirms it. We really dodged a bullet. It was fucking weird. And then on top of that, they're very much proponents of censorship. And censorship is generally something that people only think is a good idea if they're kind of stupid. You're like, oh, censorship's a great idea, but it only is if you're in control. But you're not always in control if you're a Democrat or a Republican, right? Because we share control of the U.S., or whoever's in charge shares control of the U.S. And maybe, just maybe, choosing what people can say is extremely detrimental. It's extraordinarily detrimental to, the the not just credibility, but the integrity of the U.S. in surviving be extraordinarily detrimental. But people, especially when you don't think things through, are like, oh yeah, I don't want these guys to talk anymore. I hate these guys. I hate these guys. Fucking censorship's amazing. You know, like, you're like, yeah, but what happens if they don't want you to talk and they're in power? And like, you know, they don't really think things completely out. And it's just, yeah, I don't know. Like, it's weird to ever say that because I was never a Trump supporter, and I'm still really not, but it was still the better of two bad options, is basically the way it came out. And that's, I don't know. Here we are, and now we have this going on, and this didn't happen during the last election, so yeah. And kind of curious because they could have done this. It could have made a Department of Transparency in the last administration. They could have made a Department of Transparency, but they didn't. They didn't do a lot of things, and a lot of things that they did were very much swept under the radar, like the establishment of the Department of DEI. That was actually a branch of the government for 3 years. And I voted for Biden, but it very much feels like he wasn't running things for like 2.5 years. He just checked out, and someone else was doing things. I don't know who it was, but it very much feels like other people were running things because, like, if you look at some of his speeches from like 18 and 19, he's a completely different person. It's just crazy. But who knows? Now that's over, and now we have this. So here we go.
Benefits to such a large population of people.
Yeah.
The basic questions we all have.
USAD being one of the biggest ones where they're actually figured out that USAD wasn't actually, if you guys heard about that in the news, USAD wasn't actually providing benefits to who they were saying they were, and possibly just a giant fucking front for funneling money into, I don't even say covert ops as much as just the socially engineering, basically what you think and what you hear, which is insane, like a propaganda program, which is really fucking weird.
The efforts to transport the illegals from
obviously Republican issues if you didn't care about this
in the United States to these sanctuary cities, and are the mayors going to comply with federal law now? Are they going to work with Tom Homan and the national security groups in the Trump administration to try to deport the criminal illegals and stop being a sanctuary city? Worried about what?
Do we feel less worried about Eric Adams?
Eric Adams, I mean, you know, he was one of the first mayors to bring up the crisis situation, the fiscal impact on the city. So I think he would be
I know who this is.
A very good witness, and we have a lot of questions for him, just like we do the other 3 mayors. So,
all right, one last question, then we're going to wrap it up. News Nation, let's go.
Oh.
Your relationship with whistleblowers, is it going to be the normal process that oversight typically does, or would this be? Are you going to create a separate avenue for the task force?
I mean, we're all about the normal process, but look, if you have information and it's credible, we've always approached it in that I'd like to be the person that does the interviews for it, mainly because, especially with stuff like this, we want to make sure that there's, you know, not bad actors that are pushing false information to create a narrative that's simply not there. And so, you know, every whistleblower that does come forward, as of right now, there's people that have been publicly out there, for example, on the JFK stuff, that were actually present in the room at.
They actually do. It's actually kind of weird how that works, but there is a significant amount of hot women in the rep side, which is interesting in and of itself. Or just, I guess, attractive women. Yeah. She's one of them. Mace is also very attractive.
At the operating room where he was actually brought to right after the shooting. So we hope to bring those people in to testify. And again, these hearings will be open to the public. I'm also expanding this to the entire conference. So if someone's going to take this seriously and look at it through an investigative lens and get answers for the American people, they are welcome to ask questions of the witnesses, and you guys will all receive notice of that.
And we'll work with anyone who currently works with the federal government that wants to declare whistleblower status and receive whistleblower protection.
So, from what I've heard, this is obviously, I don't have complete knowledge of, or what would you say? I don't know all the facts on whistleblowers, but from what I understand is whistleblowers still don't have really good protection, and they can literally be come after, which is also still stopping people from being whistleblowers, even though, not Barber, Gersh apparently was supposedly working on protections to help with that. I don't think they're actually doing what they're supposed to, at least is what I've read. So.
What they're interested in doing, and I don't think
Whistleblowers are incredibly important because it keeps people honest. It keeps governments and agencies and companies honest because at the end of the day, otherwise they form their nefarious narratives that then basically are used against the greater good or for people in general. That's like not what they're there for.
The previous administration gave whistleblowers, particularly the IRS whistleblowers, that blew the whistle on the cover-up of the Biden family.
And I'd also like to close with this. If you are an independent investigator, we are being told that the FBI has now located thousands of pages of documents that they lost before, specifically relating to JFK.
Yeah, this is so. I mentioned this at the beginning of this. I mentioned that they just came across this in the last 2 weeks, I think, if I'm remembering things properly. They literally found out that there was just undocumented just boxes of documents on the JFK assassination that were never presented to the committee that was actually looking into it. Yeah, there's a lot. Like I said, even if you don't like Republicans, even if you don't like this administration, they're literally going like this, and there is all sorts of fucking weird shit that's just dropping out, guys. And it should be interesting to you as a U.S. citizen or even outside the U.S. This is pretty weird shit.
Going to get through as much as we can.
Yeah.
We have a great team of attorneys.
It's bipartisan. You should be for this in general. Transparency is good. I mean, it's the whole reason they're there.
Accept help from the public, and so we will be to get through as much as we can. We have a great team of attorneys. We have a great team of investigators looking into this, but it doesn't mean that we won't accept help from the public, and so we will be setting up a place for collection for people to present information. But again, this is about transparency. The government works for us. There have been people, I think, in power for too long that try to silo us and keep us in the dark, but that stops today.
There's literally lifers, guys. Although Congress is arguably lifers, too. And arguably, I do think that there should be term limits on people in Congress. I don't think there should be term limits on the president because he is extremely visible. He's people everyone is always interested in voting on. Every election cycle, the presidency election is very, very public. However, Congress, people in Congress get slipped under the radar constantly. And while I don't think it should be 4 years, I think something like 10 or 15-year term for Congress is actually important to keep cycling them out so we get new blood in there that's actually interested in whatever, the population now is interested in. And people just keep voting for the same people because they don't know of other options. And oftentimes people in Congress are just run uncontested. Like there's just no other options, so just people vote for them.
Out of the White House, out of the CIA, the FBI, and that the government works for us. There have been people, I think, in power for too long.
I mean, she's part of the government too.
In the dark, but that stops today. You're seeing that same message come out of the White House, out of the CIA, the FBI, and every other agency in between. So we are very happy to have the support.
It's actually looking a lot like people are pointing at the Department of Defense and going, "What's going on over here, man? What's going on in this Pentagon building?" Really kind of curious now.
Chairman Comer and Speaker Johnson, and if you guys have
Comer?
any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to Oversight Comms, and we'd be happy to answer those at that time. Thank you, guys.
Interesting. So, as I mentioned, I wanted to cover this, guys, mainly because I think this is a bipartisan issue, and it's something that is, like, normally I cover all the UAP congressional hearings because I think they're extremely interesting, mainly because it's not even, as becoming apparent, it's not even necessarily if you believe in little green men or flying saucers or whatever. That's not really the takeaway right now. If you are an American citizen and the government works for you, as she's saying, what's interesting is the fact that people with top secret clearance levels that we elect, Congress, and possibly even the president, doesn't have access to this information that's being withheld from them. Who exactly is in control? That's the big takeaway. It's not even little green men. That is an angle, and I'm very curious about that. I'm a Star Trek fan, or used to be prior to Discovery. Strange New World is still pretty decent. But, I'm a big sci-fi fan. I've been for the longest time. I really hope First Contact happens in my lifetime. However, I'm very much grounded in reality, and I want to see things. I want to actually see the facts. I don't want to have things sugar-coated and force-fed just random narratives so I can live my day-to-day life behind a picket fence, which I can't afford anymore. I actually want, I want to see the truth. That's where I'm at. But this issue extends beyond even little green men. It is the integrity of the government which is being called into question, is the fact that there might be people in control of the government which might not even have anything to do with the president, which is absolutely insane. The whole idea is absolutely insane. In terms of how it's hard to sell, it would be hard to sell because people in Congress aren't going to want to give up their job. I don't think they ever thought, so the life expectancy for people back then was a lot younger than it was, and nowadays people, like the age for Congress keeps going up. Putting aside, it would be hard to pass term limits for Congress when basically their job is Congress, right? So there is a conflict of interest there between what's actually good for the country and them keeping their jobs, and there aren't many people that are willing to pull the trigger on that one. But as far as that goes, like the average age of people in Congress has continued to climb every year. And when the country is first founded and people are living to their 50s, and now they're living to 90, and they're basically being pushed around in a wheelchair and basically barely cognizant, they probably shouldn't be being elected into Congress anymore. And yeah, I don't know. Like it's a completely, not completely, but we're in a very different time period than we used to be in. Mainly, where the case of a presidency, you have someone that is extremely visible and is extremely scrutinized every time he's elected. Like, I would be very comfortable with like just a president continuing for more than 8 years. Like, that'd be perfectly fine because it takes a while to change stuff in your country. And I like, people might view that as a dictatorship, but you're always electing them, so it's not really that big of a deal. I don't think that would ever really be a bad issue, other than like presidency is like basically serve for 3 years, presidents serve for 3 years, and the fourth year is basically like campaigning again. Yeah, but it's kind of like the life expectancy or the average age of people in Congress, Republican or Democrat, just keeps going up, and like, you need new blood in there. You need people that might be willing to do exactly what's happening here, which is transparency. Where the old guard might be like, no, the system's worked for the last 100 years. Why are we going to change this, man? It's going to shake things up. The world's going to end. Like one of those things, and they're just worried about retiring to their farm with their beets and shit. And you're just like, yeah, no, maybe people want things to be better than they currently are, right? And sometimes, like, especially when you're older, you get stuck in the status quo of just doing things over and over and over again, and it's comfortable, right? And that's not necessarily what everyone else in the country wants. So, yeah, like I think term limits on Congress is actually extremely important, and maybe like Congress would probably be the biggest ones to push back against that, mainly because they're lifers, they live there, right? And you probably could offer some other, maybe there'd be some sort of other job you could offer there, so it wouldn't be as bad, like a pension or something, right? But like a 15-year term limit or something, if you serve you're elected for all 15 years, then you get like a pension or something. I don't know. There's ways of doing it, but right now, as it is, there's literally people in Congress that are clearly might not be there in the best interest of the people in the U.S., and that's also not what you want either. But, whatever. Either way, guys, this is a big deal, mainly because this is an oversight committee for oversight, which is hilarious because, as we mentioned at the beginning here, is AARO was initially introduced as kind of like this transparent branch that was supposed to take in all this information, and then they just got gobbled up by what appears to be the Pentagon, the Department of Defense. And now they're just, they aren't really transparent anymore. But don't worry, prior to this conference, right after Luna talked about a transparency agency, they released a statement where they debunked one of the most prolific UFOs, the UAPs, ever to be seen. Don't worry, they're on top of it, guys. They released it. It's all good. It was, let's see. AARO assesses with high confidence that the object did not move at anomalous speeds. So, don't worry, it was not moving fast despite what you saw in the footage. It was not. This is the video that's been around for 8 years. 2015, 10 years. 2015. Don't worry about it. It was actually moving at 5 to 92 miles per hour. Like, just, once again, like the weird correlations here of, hey, this has been around forever, and we have trained military pilots up there with hundreds of hours in jets, thousands of hours in jets, flying around, other trained personnel look at it, but don't worry, you guys just fucking figured this shit out right before Luna made this basically big announcement, which, arguably might be because they're trying to stop people from seeing it, right? Let's take a look at, I think there's some interviews here too. Let's take a quick look at this too. Let's see. I think she had an interview. I remember seeing her on an interview after. Same one. Everyone's basically showing the same footage. There was definitely an interview I saw.
The head of the House Oversight Committee, Republican James Comer of Kentucky, has
Comer?
created a new task force on the declassification of federal secrets.
Same thing.
And he tapped Republican Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna of Florida to chair it.
For far too long, the American people have had reasonable questions of what their government, which they fund every day, keeps hidden about certain issues.
John F. Kennedy said Comer said so look at the Jeffrey Epstein objects and various federal
People actually us,
announced
but they're investigating.
assassination.
Now, so this is actually a pretty big deal, by the way, guys. You might not think it is, but in terms of transparency for the government and stuff that might be hidden from the public and Congress, which is supposed to have top secret clearance, pretty big deal. Let's see. There was definitely an interview I saw. Where is it? Let's see. She did an interview yesterday. Check the Twitters. I actually found the whole timeline. AARO in the last 6 months, guys, their timeline for when they're releasing information is kind of curious. Oh. Here's a snippet. By the way, the more people they have on this, the harder it is for them to control it, even though it'll lead to some disagreements.
Sean, for too long, the American people have doubted government, rightfully so. They held back lots of information that the American people were entitled to. And I'm just thankful for President Trump being in office. Now, I just want to put this out there. If we find that the president's executive order is stonewalled, I do not put it past Chairman Comer or Speaker Johnson to hold those people in inherent contempt. And so do not.
This is the curious part here, guys. This is the real weird thing, is what's going to happen if the Pentagon just decides not to give information to Congress or the president. Like, what's going to happen here?
Push back against what the president
I assume they're going to.
This. The American people deserve this, and we will be following through on this. Sean, for too long.
But, like, they actually hold to the point where they don't, like, they're willing to be hostile about it. Would be fucking weird. Let's see. Do we have something else here? Doop-a-doop-a-doo. All from the same video we already watched. I thought maybe it was just this that I saw. The Gulf of America. Guys, I mean, that's just fucking hilarious. I don't fucking care. Someone signed an executive order and got a name changed on a map. I don't fucking give a shit. That's hilarious, though. That people are up in arms about that, or even that they did it in the first place. But anyways, Very cool issue, and really hope that we see more. Like the AARO, on the other hand, was a relatively secretive, not organization, but branch of the government. And as such, we've kind of lost track of them over time, and they kind of had to say hello to Congress occasionally, and that's what we kept track of. But Congress likes talking to themselves, so we're probably going to see more out of the Oversight Committee relatively, I hope, monthly, relatively frequently. Like, monthly updates would not, like, it's kind of weird how social media or just media in general is not utilized enough in the government, and they really could for basically leveraging not only power, but also transparency and basically credibility or public reception. So making, like, fireside chats, right? So keeping the public aware of what's going on and keeping up reputation or them, people wanting to reelect them, right? Being voices of people. It's kind of been lost over the years, but they could do that. And like having something that's like a monthly meeting where they actually talk about progress or lack thereof and issues that might be popping up might actually lead to a scenario where there's less stonewalling because it's more frequent and kind of something where people have to just do things as opposed to, and just give them more time, a little bit more, just wait on things, one of those things. So I hope they actually lead to, they keep up with it, because they said they were going to, and unlike AARO, they aren't really, they're public facing, so yeah, we'll have to wait and see, guys. But alrighty, I wanted to cover this in the podcast here tonight, guys. We're probably going to, I'm going to upload this to the tubes, get this to the tubes here, as I do with every major highlight I make or major podcast that I do. So, let's see, guys. Okay, I have to wait for the video to catch up.